Let's continue unwrapping some of our larger pieces, like this faceplate here. I'll select it and hit / on the number pad, tab into edit mode, select everything, unwrap, and let's maximize our UV space to see what we're dealing with. And it's not nearly as bad as the piece I unwrapped in the previous lesson. The red and yellow areas are fewer and further between. So right out of the gate, our faces aren't being stretched too much, but in particular, this green area down here at the bottom, green is not the worst, but I still want to try and get it as close to blue as possible. We also have some cylindrical shapes that can be cut out to greatly relieve some of the stretching. And so the first thing I'll do is cut out those cylinders right in here. Shift-Alt clicking to select edge loops. Let's select all the way around, including this little notch. Hit Control-E, mark seam. We'll see that piece get separated, and everywhere around the border gets closer to blue, so that's a good sign. Let's continue around with this second cylinder. And yikes, another 5-sided polygon in there. Bummer. I hate when I have to do this. I'm gonna have to make a triangle with J. Not the best topology, but big picture it's not gonna matter at all. Okay, go back to selecting the border around our cylinder. And let's see, I have to decide whether or not to cut out this way. I don't think I will. Let's deselect that one. Instead, let's go this way. There we go, Control-E, mark seam. That relieves that area pretty well. And since they are cylinders, our unwrap will benefit from cutting lengthwise down the cylinder. Let's give that a shot, mark seam. And that unwraps really nicely. It's almost entirely blue except for a little bit of stretching in this little notch, but that's a small feature, so I'm not too worried about that. Do the same thing up here. There we go, the stretching is relieved. And now back to the main portion. I think I can separate this kind of mohawk extrusion so that it's its own piece. Let's start by selecting the border, making our way around these screw posts. There we go. Let's hit Control-E, mark seam, see what that does. And oh yeah, I'm only doing it on the one side. So let's go ahead and symmetrize our seams. Shift-G, select seams, and then select mirror. Control-E, mark seam. And oh yeah, right away, lopping that top mohawk piece off makes the majority of our faceplate almost entirely blue. And it kind of looks like that mask from Donnie Darko. More importantly, we need to address the largely green and turquoise mohawk portion. Let's see, how about we cut out the posts entirely? Yeah, that seems to help a little bit. It's still very turquoise. What about the interior of the cylinder? That's starting to get yellow and red, which is right here. Let's try and cut that out. Oh yeah, immediately that relieves a lot of stretching. And since that is a cylindrical shape, where is that at? Right here. Let's go ahead and cut lengthwise to open it up. There we go. That unwraps almost entirely blue, so that's great. Now I just need to symmetrize our seams. Shift-G, seam, select mirror, Control-E, mark seam. Let's take a look at our layout. Yeah, I think that looks really good. Even though we do have some green and turquoise, I'm not too worried about it. Again, the yellow and red is what I'm most concerned with. So overall, I'm very happy with this. We can move on to a new piece. Let's exit local view, and we'll focus on this mouthpiece next. Local view, tab into edit mode. With everything selected, unwrap. And let's analyze where the bad stretching is. Overall, it's fairly bluish green, which is a good sign, though we do have another cylindrical inset, and those faces are turning yellowy orange, so we're going to want to cut that out. And with this nose piece, we're getting some significant stretching up here, and that's mainly due to the boxy nature, where we have harsh angles and edges. So let's start there. I think if I just cut these two edges on the side open. Control E, mark seam. Yeah, that relieves all the pressure on that piece. So I think that's all the seams I need to cut there. Let's cut out that cylinder. And that relieves some of the pressure around that keyhole shape. But let's see if I cut lengthwise down our cylinder. Control E, mark seam. Yeah, that opens it up really well. It's almost entirely blue. But this area towards the top of the mouthpiece is a little more green than blue. So let's see if I can't relieve some of that stretching. How about we lop this piece off? Yeah, that seems to help. Let's maximize the view and look again. Perhaps it's a little more greenish blue than I would like, but it's also a really complex piece of geometry. So there aren't a lot of clearly defined areas that would benefit from having a seam. So I'm going to go ahead and give this the OK to move on to a new piece. Let's leave local view, and how about this guy? Select everything in edit mode, U unwrap, and that piece is very green. And given the boxy nature with hard edges and hard angles, I actually think I'm not going to demonstrate laying out this piece, and instead I'll leave this as the subject of an exercise, so you can practice laying this piece out. So we will just skip it and move on to one more for this video. Let's give this one a shot. Local view, tab into edit mode, unwrap everything, analyze the stretching. We've got a pretty significant amount of green happening, and even some yellow and red, or yellow and orange. So my habit is to identify these cylindrical shapes, which we do have one, and I like to address those areas first because those tend to provide the most relief for stretching right away. So how about I simply lop this off, Control E, mark seam, and yeah, that immediately starts to relieve the pressure, and the cylinder itself looks a lot better. I think that was a good move. Now we have some boxy structure up here, so when we have these harsher angles, I like to relieve them with a seam. Let's see if it helps out. Should be able to Alt-click right there to get that edge loop. Perfect. Control E, mark seam. It definitely opened up a little bit, but I don't see the color of the faces changing too much. So maybe I won't cut a seam right there. How about the rest of the cylinder? Let's cut it off right there, and that provided some relief. Yeah, that's definitely better. Okay, we still have some yellow and orange in this intrusion, which certainly needs to be addressed. This type of shape is very easy to unwrap. I'm going to cut out the extrusion at the edge, Control E, mark seam. We can see how much that relieves the pressure there. And now with the interior of the extrusion, it's basically a box. So you can think of it like a cardboard box. Just cut down the edges and it should lay flat. There we go. That's almost perfectly blue. Very nice. Let's see where else. Our main piece looks pretty good until we get down into this area, which gets fairly complex as far as the structure. So like I did with that intrusion, let's go ahead and lop this area off. Control E, mark seam. There we go. Pressure's relieved around the area. And now I think if I cut out these straight pieces in here, we should be pretty good. There we go. That looks a lot better. And the pieces I cut away, they're almost entirely blue. So that's great. Is there anywhere else? Yes, right up here. I think, if I remember correctly, yeah, it gets very boxy. So this could benefit from, let's say, two edges cut like this. There we go. Very, very nice, very clean. And overall, the pressure is relieved enough. Colors are bluish green to a satisfactory degree. And I can continue on to my other pieces, which I will do through a time lapse because all this is very repetitive. It's just the same process. Focus on one piece at a time and try to eliminate as much yellow and red from the face stretching as you possibly can while being mindful not to have too many seams. Because remember, if we cut a seam, right down the middle like this in plain sight, If I throw on a procedural texture, then this seam will be very noticeable. So I want to be mindful to put the seams where they'll be as subtle as possible. So when we have hard edges like this, that's a good area, like it is over here as well. And it allows me to avoid large seams right down the middle of open faces like this. So at this point, you should be prepared enough to unwrap your own model. And as practice, I encourage you to do the UV exercise for unwrapping this piece right here, and then pick it up either at the time lapse, or if you feel comfortable to do it on your own, you can pick it up after the time lapse, where we will consolidate all these UVs into a single UV space.